Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Dunton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey.
Hi there. Recently, Sheila and I had the pleasure of interviewing Ina Avote McWilliams, who is a yoga, fertility, and birth doula and the owner of Fertility Love. We had a wonderful conversation about attachment parenting that we feel so strongly about, and we wanted to share this with you. In this episode, we dive right into the 4 pillars of attachment parenting, and we hope you get a lot out of this interview.
Hi, this is Sheila,
And this is Maria.
and we want to welcome you to the Moms I Know.
So now being an educator for attachment parenting, we often talk about the 4 most inner needs of a child, and they are proximity, protection, predictability, and play. And it starts in early infancy by holding our little baby right attached to our heart, actually physically attached to our hands, because babies spend most of the time in our arms. And then as they grow, they learn their world through us in a direct mirror image. They sense our heart rate, our breathing, then it continues into hearing what we hear. They learn from us how we respond to different situations, how we respond to different people in our world. Then they start exploring little bit by little bit their independency. And then as their little toddler sitting on our lap, they reach out and explore. But that predictability that we're always there for them. They can always reach right back to us, and we become this big safe space. And that's why I talk about secure attachment. It's not helicopter parenting, but it's the secure attachment that we always have their innate needs in the best interest. And then now knowing my kids who are 2, 5, and 8, as they started walking, running, going to school, they explore and step further away from me very easily, very confidently, because they know that anytime they can turn back and I'll be right there. And one thing that I struggled in my childhood was that I couldn't express my negative emotions to my parents. I was to be a good girl. And this is still a challenging part to me as a parent when my kids come from school and they crash and they're absolutely upset. And I have to take a deep breath in, deep breath out, and truly listen and validate their story, because that's all they want. So this is when the most magic happens, in those very vulnerable moments when they can truly express their feelings. And I had this discussion with my son. He's a little life philosopher about a year ago. I'm like, how comes every time you come from school, you just fall apart and you're rude and emotionally somewhat aggressive? Are you like that at school? And he's like, Mommy, this is a safe house. If not here, where else am I gonna let all my feelings out? At school, I have to be organized and well behaved, and I have to respect everyone. I have to respond, and I have to follow the rules. And at home, I can just let it go. I can just breathe it all out, because I know you're going to be right here to catch me. And I just went, oh my God. And all of a sudden, all those tantrums and explosions, I'm like, this is beautiful. My kids can truly be themselves as me. And that's what I want. When I think about long-term relationships, and I think when my kids are going to be 20 or 30 or 40, that they can come home to me no matter what, because it doesn't matter if they're happy or unhappy. It's just them.
Yeah, that's a really great story. Thank you for that, the wisdom of your son. And it really plays into my next question, which was to tell us some of the benefits of secure attachment.
Yes. So I think the first utmost benefit of secure attachment is it goes both ways. So in infancy, if your baby is closely attached to you, it benefits both, because you as a mother having the baby in your arms, you calm down, you're more content because your baby is most protected in your arms. Then also, if you're lucky and fortunate enough to be able to breastfeed, breastfeeding is demand and supply relationship. So again, having the baby on you in your arms, or hopefully in a good baby carrier, it's a demand supply relationship. Your baby communicates with body signs or with sounds, and you're right there. The more you nurse, the more oxytocin, the more prolactin, and you calm down. And also, you're nursing your baby. All those magical skin to skin attachment actually nourishes your maternal hormones and calms you. And then you're more content as well. And I'm not sure if it gives you more quantity of sleep, but it definitely gives you the quality of sleep. And I too often hear parents who are exhausted and really struggling with not getting enough sleep. And I'm like, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of the sleep. And I think in modern times, when everyone is busy, it's like giving permission to be closely attached with your baby, giving permission to take lazy days with your baby. So that's the first benefit of attachment parenting. And then when the babies get exploring the world, when they start crawling and walking, being in that proximity to the baby and forgetting about all the to-dos, then you kind of step into the next relationship stage where you start seeing the world through the eyes of your little baby, through the eyes of the toddler. And it really brings that new joy of simple things. And then you start communicating, and also the first language is starting to being built with your baby. And the more you express about what you are doing, how you're doing, the more baby talks right back to you. And those are the first chit chats with your kids. And then when I think further on, was now my 5-year-old and 8-year-old, the benefits are, I can't even know, like there's something so deeply connected that, when you talk about your husband when you were in love in the honeymoon phase, that you could finish each other's sentences. So I have that with my kids. Like we're constantly falling in love, like where I know already what they're going to say and they kind of already know what I'm going to say. And that when the older they get, the more you explore this attachment through play. And that's magical. It's kind of, and again, the benefits goes both ways, because the more they can rely on me having their back, the more I can rely on them having my back. Because it's a relationship. It goes both ways.
That's really sweet. And both Maria and I have the what would you say, the perspective that, I have a 17 and a 15 and 10-year-old, and Maria's children, I believe the youngest is how old, Maria? 30?
Oh gosh, they're 31, 33, and my stepson is in his mid 40s. So yeah, we have the perspective.
Yeah, the perspective. And so it's so nice to hear you practicing attachment parenting, because what I can say, attachment parenting for me, for my teenagers, it has allowed them so much growth, because they have such a strong sense of self. And so all of our children, Maria's and mine, have been exchange students, going to a foreign country. My two children did it at age 13 for 6 months, to Spain and to France, not knowing the language, not knowing the people they were staying with, the families. And I do believe that was because of attachment parenting, in the sense that such a strong sense of who they were, and that we were here if they needed anything, and allowed them that confidence. And so we are both such believers in attachment parenting. For some people who don't know what attachment parenting is, and I know you said the 4 Ps, and I understand that, but really, what does it look like? Like, what is attachment parenting? If you were to say, I practice attachment parenting and I've never heard about it, and what would I see? Like, what we see baby carrying, but what else would it see as you're getting older?
Okay, so just to dive a bit deeper before attachment parenting. So our little babies are born kind of neurologically blind. If we compare their development at the birth with in comparison to the age, it's only 25%. So it is through our parenting style that babies develop and learn around the world. So in practicality, attachment parenting would mean that responding with your child with utmost love and always knowing that you're there to guide them. They're not, this is a hard one. Attachment parenting. In everyday life, it means, so basically being securely attached to your baby, responding to your baby with care, and also being aware of what your baby might be able to do at this stage in their brain development and what they're not able to do in their life at that stage. For example, so their brain development skyrockets within the first year, and it only reaches full capacity of our adult brain development at age 25. So it's a really long journey. When you think that babies can truly make a decision or make a choice, they really cannot until they're teenagers. And even when you compare teenager brain to an adult brain, there's a huge gap where the 16-year-old can make a truly informed, educated decision in comparison to what a 25-year-old person could do, right? So I think it's that reaction to the child's needs with utmost care and love and understanding that this is their best. They're dealing with a lot of information coming their way. And especially, everyone says the terrible twos, the terrible threes, they're out there to get me. What actually is happening, that's where their limbic brain kicks in. So there's three brains in us. So when the babies are born, it's mostly the primal brain is acute. So it's how to breathe, regulating the temperature, regulating the heart. And again, the closer your baby's to your heart, if your baby were your baby, you're helping them to learn the primal brain to become very in tuned and well monitoring, well working. Then around 2-3, their limbic brain develops, and that's the big emotions. So when the baby's having a tantrum, they're experiencing some kind of emotion they totally cannot make sense. And I mean, I have emotions, and sometimes I can't make sense of my emotions. I'm just feeling them. So imagine 2-year-olds. So that's where the proximity comes in, that instead of letting them to disappear from your environment to deal on their own emotions on their own, just be there for them. And some babies want to be hugged, and some babies want to be held, but some babies don't. They want to be left alone, and kind of they get like, I need space. But that doesn't mean you put them in the other room. It just means there's space, you don't touch them. So I always tell my baby, I'm right here when you need a hug. And my daughter, she's very sassy, and she's like, I don't need your hug. And I'm like, okay. When I feel the change in her tone, I'm like, mommy needs a hug. Because we both went through that emotional explosion, not just that. And with the older kids, I find that attachment parenting plays in a role that really listening to their stories and validating without agenda. No matter what their story is, no matter how maybe obscene it seems to me as an adult, that's their story. That's their emotions. That is what they're going through. And just validating it and loving it. And for me, the word love means listen for an L, observe for O, V for validation, and E for empowerment. And the empowerment comes in a way that, okay, so now I've listened to them, I observed them, I've validated that what they're doing or what they're feeling, and empowerment comes, now what? we both are in that situation. Like, let's say they've done something wrong. The bike was left on the laneway and the car smashed the bike. So empowerment comes in the way. Now what? What is your solution to the situation? What is my solution to situation? And giving them that choice and give them the practice of seeing how the actions have reactions and stepping in. What are the actions that they could make a choice over and which ones are still in mommy's role? And yeah, I hope this answers it. I think I lost a thought somewhere.
No, I really appreciate that. And I love the way that you've taken love and you have the 4 steps of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're talking about really being aware of child development. And this is something that I think, you know, both Sheila and I spend so much time trying to help parents understand that children are not little adults, that the brain development is completely, you know, there's the stages of child development. And we don't learn that as adults necessarily. We don't learn how to acknowledge the different steps that they're going through. And you spoke to that so beautifully about the different stages of the brain and what is going on and what a child needs at those different stages. So I really appreciate that. And I think that so often, so many of the struggles that happen in parenting is because we aren't acknowledging where a child is at
Exactly.
in their stage, and that we expect them, even, you know, like if they're 5 or 6 and they're so capable and they're so competent and they can do so many things, but we think that they're not going to have those big emotions still, or that they're growing up. But you know, when you say that really until we're 25 that brain development is continuing on. And so I think just addressing this whole concept of child development education is so key, because I think people, when they hear attachment parenting, they don't always understand what that means, and really that those stages. So thank you for expressing that so clearly.
And I think just to clarify that, so there's 2 ways how to go about it. One is think back in your own childhood when you were at 5. I have this vivid memory of my cousin taking away my bike. And I tried to go back and thinking, how did I feel about it as a child? Like, if you don't have time to study the brain development or child development, just go back in your own history, in your own memory, and think, how would I have felt it? Or how did I feel in those situations, right? Or, for example, when my mom let me go to the store and buy my own ice cream, right? Oh my gosh, those memories are bright and vivid. And then attachment parenting, it is not just, yes, how to hold your baby and nurse your baby and how to cuddle your baby and sing cute songs, but it really is a compilation of anthropology, neuroscience, the child behavior development, and the science of genetics really plays key. So let's say if you come from a past of very strict parenting, so you can make a choice to parent your children either the same way or the opposite way, or actually choose the golden middle road. Because even you relive your childhood with your children and you think, well, genetics, it's just genetic. My kids are the same way. And no, epigenetics proves it over and over. It's that repeated positive association. So let's say I lose it one time, but then next 3 times I do respond positive in a positive way with love. That is huge. Then I lose it again, but next time I respond to the situations 4 times. So in your child's brain, that positive response matters way more than whatever happened before. And especially with children, with the growing brain, their ability to change their response, their ability to change their association with the parent as a loving relationship is huge. So take that chance, breathe in, breathe out, and try. Okay, I got it. My gut reaction is to scream or punish or give timeout. what if this time I'm going to respond completely nonchalant with love? And then you do it next time, and then you lose it maybe, and then you do it 3 times in a row. And kids are just like, oh my God, their capacity to love you back is so much huger than ours. They have forgiveness for everything. Even for me, when I think back about my parents, right? They screwed up so many times, and I still love them, like unconditionally.
Thank you so much for that, because it allows the opportunity, the curiosity. You know, we've had a few guests come on and talk about the curiosity, parenting with curiosity. And it's really, and that's what it is with attachment parenting as well. It's just like, you know, have a vision of what kind of family you want. And even if you came from, not, you know, family trauma or something like that, that doesn't have to be your family. And so I really love how you said that. That was really beautiful.
And sometimes it goes the opposite way. I have a friend whose parents were super, super strict. So they became very easy peasy with their kids, but it nearly turned into the same associations, just the flip side of it. And Barbara Colorosa has a beautiful book about Kids Are Worth It, where you don't have to be the same or the opposite. You can really create your own type of relationship with children. And just to give you an example, when I was taking the training with Lisa Parker and Barbara on attachment parenting education, she gave us one white list and said, so when your kids grow up, what do you want them to be? What characteristics you want them to be? And I had this huge list. I want them to be bright, strong, smart, ambitious, curious, vibrant. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's a huge list of expectation. No wonder it's hard, right, for my kids. And then I just scratched it all out, and I just want them to be happy. And what makes them happy? If I am happy about them, no matter what. Love is simple. It truly never fails.
Exactly. And it's hard though. I think people when they hear about AP, we've done a really good job of talking about it, of talking about how important it is and everything, but there's still people who struggle with it. And it's, you know, when we look at, like, we do live in a patriarchal society, and you know, like what, I guess, like, how can we keep on showing up? I mean, I know you're doing education and everything, but how can we keep on, and I've had this question before, and it's been a hard one for me, Maria, to articulate it in the sense that we can see what attachment parenting is, you know, and we're talking about it and everything, and we have the perspective. However, because we live in a patriarchal society, it's oftentimes frowned upon, you know, not frowned upon, but often kind of crazy parenting, or I don't, you know, there's a lot of people are not comfortable with that degree of parenting. How would you respond to somebody who is critical of attachment parenting?
Yeah. So it's actually quite easy. If we look back into our history, at the end of last century, it was the Dr. Watson who actually published the first, so he's the grandfather of pediatrics, of American pediatrics. And he was the first one that said that the babies need to be fed and nurtured and cared on a very strict schedule. And then in his footsteps followed Dr. Holt, and he was the one in 1928 who wrote a book, How to Care for Your Infant. And he said the baby should not be held because they cry out of bad habit. The baby is only to be patted on the back for the good behavior, and especially not being held or loved for the first 6 months. And that, what it did, it actually messaged that you as a mother, you do not listen to your gut. You do not respond to your baby. And yes, I can think about it as like, oh my God, this is horrible. Or I can just say that was the message in those times. However, it is ingrained in nowadays modern parenting. And not until I believe was it 1948, 52, when Dr. Spock, and he was the first one that started studying the dynamics of the family and thinking, what are those emotional needs of the children? And that is like a century ago, oh, Dr. Watson and Holt, but that messaging is still in our modern parenting. And actually, the granddaughter of Dr. Watson is doing a beautiful work now by speaking up what her grandfather did and saying that created a lot of mental illness. And she's speaking up that to heal your own childhood trauma, you create the most nurturing, nourishing, compassionate relationship with your kids. And I can absolutely testify to it 200% that I have healed my own inner child, my own childhood trauma by choosing to be the parent that I am. It's not easy and I lose it. I make mistakes, but every time I choose better. And I think too, also, no judgment for losing it or anything. Like I speak openly to my kids about losing it. And I speak openly to my kids about it, like from very tiny infancy. And I said, this is me. This has nothing to do with you. I was triggered by my friend. I was triggered by dirty dishes. I was triggered because I stayed up too late and watched too much Netflix. Just being very honest and vulnerable. But by voicing it out loud to them, you actually love yourself. You create that compassion for yourself, the same love. Listen, observe, validate, empower. And I totally I'm still healing my childhood through becoming the parent that I want.
Well, we talk about parenting as a healing journey and
yes.
parenting as a spiritual path. And I mean, it's so true that as we raise our own children, we get to do things either similarly or differently, but we get to choose that. And I think what happened with those generations, sort of that in between of having a routine or a schedule or sort of not really listening to the children, that children should be seen and not heard kind of mentality.
Very punitive parenting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, we talk about children being so resilient. And so I think that in general, we can transcend quite a bit. And yet by our going back and really working with our families in this more conscious way, we are healing ourselves and creating a whole different possibility for the future. And that's, why Sheila and I have decided to create this podcast and why we're speaking about this and really, and interviewing people and helping to deepen this conversation about what it truly means to raise a family with, optimal health and wellness and, physical, emotional, and family dynamics that are healthy. And so I really appreciate the way that you've been speaking to this.
Yeah, when we listen around, those old messages are everywhere. The well-intended advice from the doctors, from family members and everything. And initially I was very repulsed by those messages and I was very judgy about those messages. But now I look at them with most compassion and it's like validation. Yeah, that was their case. Like it's actually their own pain coming through. And I always, I work with lots of parents and I tell them, your mother's gut is always right. Even if I suggest something to you, but your gut says the opposite, you know your limits. You know where you can explode your love more. You go for that because your gut knows you and your baby the best. So in the situation when somebody tells something, oh, your baby's too attached to you, your baby is 2.5 and you're still nursing. And I'm saying, thank you for your opinion. Sometimes I can't say it loud, but in my mind, I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Got it. But I also got my own gut.
That's some great wisdom because I do think that was, the criticisms that a lot of people get when I'm in some of those Facebook groups and, and I remember nursing 2.5-year-old and feeling that sometimes. And I like what you said. I came up with a saying, probably heard it someplace else, but space and grace, giving yourself the space, giving your children the space, but then that grace of just letting it be, forgive yourself for, and move on, because that's what we need. And I think it's a great parenting for myself, as well as showing up,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's why I call it parenting from the heart, because you got to have that heart and compassion for yourself first, right? It's that balance. You can't give what you don't have. And many use that as well, I wasn't raised that way. I have a bad childhood, so I can't give better childhood to my kids. And I'm like, no. Like, why don't you flip it and start by loving yourself and loving your kids? Right. And then you hear the comments, well, I turned out okay. Look at me. And I'm like, whom are you trying to convince?
Exactly. Right.
I didn't question if you're okay or not.
Yeah. I love it. What a great conversation. Thank you so much, Ina. If our listeners want to learn more about attachment parenting, can you tell us where they can find you?
So I'm running every month. I have a free online webinar going, a little mini masterclass on various topics of attachment parenting. So you can find me at fertilitylove.com. Subscribe and I'll let you know about all the juicy stuff happening. I have a Facebook page too. It's called Fertility Love. And I also have a beautiful Facebook closed group called Flourishing Mamas. And that's a really safe, sacred spot to discuss all these topics, completely judgment-free. And I usually post there really advanced research on childcare, on raising attached children, on emotionally healthy parenting. And we talk about really vulnerable and honest discussion how we as parents deal with those situations. So you can contact me directly, and I will invite you to the closed Facebook group where we can take it further.
Thank you so much, Ina, for being here today.
Thank you. My deepest gratitude for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you for the work you're doing. Ina, thank you so much for all of that information. We really appreciate you taking the time to share all of this with us. We hope that you enjoyed her insights and can take some of what you heard today and apply it right away wherever you are on your parenting journey. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be with you next time on The Moms I Know. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today for The Moms I Know. To learn more about Sheila and her online program, The Mom Map, visit purplebeetnutrition.com. For Maria's monthly blog and to learn more about her group programs and retreats, visit soquelessentials.com. That's SOQUEL essentials.com. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Moms I Know. Until next week, have a joyful family journey.